Dear friends, welcome to the next discussion on the topic of media writing. In the previous lectures, we had talked about the purpose of media writing, the kind of media writing, approach of writing, and the components of language for the print media and television. We had also discussed the way of writing news items, analysis, features, editorials, interviews, and reviews, etc. These are the broad categories of media writing which are used in all kinds of media. Now, we shall move on to writing some specific kinds of articles that include press releases, political and business articles, and also specialized writing that is required for all kinds of media. In all media houses, there is a daily and steady flow of material that comes in for consideration. It is sent with a request for publication in the newspaper or the magazine. The first kind of material comes in from various sources such as news agencies like the Press Trust of India or PTI, the United News of India UNI, the two premier Indian news agencies, syndicated services, staff reporters, bureau offices, correspondents, part-time reporters, and contributors. Such material is generally in the nature of news, analysis, backgrounders, articles, and features. All these sources such as agencies and reporters and bureaus, etc., are part of the print media's structure, and therefore they are bound to come as input for the media house. Press notes is the other kind of material which is received by the media houses, which is in the nature of information sent in by organizations about their activities which they want to be published. These are generally accompanied by a covering letter that contains a request to the editor for publishing the press note or the material contained therein. This category of material is collectively known as press releases or press notes. These press notes contain information of largely these kinds. Number one, personal or organizational accomplishments and achievements. Number two, announcements regarding policy or certain decisions taken by some organizations. Number three, complaints of different kinds. Number four, invitation to programs or meetings, etc. And number five, suggestions or opinion on any current affair or any current news. The press notes could be sent in by government departments or government organizations, private organizations or companies, voluntary associations, social activists, or by any ordinary individual. As is obvious, the material of this kind is not always very properly written or even written according to the needs of the media. However, media houses always give due importance to such press notes, as these might contain significant news or information that is crucial for the media. In the case of press notes issued by the government and private organizations, these often contain information or facts and figures that are vital for making news complete. Similarly, press notes containing information about forthcoming programs are also vital for any media house. Therefore, press notes play a very important role for the media, and since these are submitted in media offices at all times, the offices have a clear and categorical system in place under which the collected press notes are brought to the reporters or the sub-editors in the newsroom, who sort them, put them in different categories, and then go through their contents so that the relevant information is included and used in the news or other items as either part of a news item or used separately as a news item made from a press release. Since press notes are held in such importance by the media houses, it is obvious that they need to be written properly so that the relevant information can be identified and used by the media. That is why it is important for press notes to be written properly. There are certain points that need to be remembered when writing a press note. These are: number one, the purpose. The purpose of the press note should be either to inform, to invite, to complain, to advise, or to announce. The subject. The subject could be about a program, a decision, an award, or any event. And the third is the source. Who is sending the press note? It could be a department, an NGO, an association, or an individual. It must be remembered that a media house receives press notes by the dozens every day. Therefore, it is most important that not even a single press note should be ignored. It needs to be framed in such a fashion that it clearly indicates the purpose for which it is written, the subject it pertains to, and the source of information. It must be remembered that if any of these crucial points are overlooked, there are chances that the press note could be ignored or discarded, defeating the very purpose of sending it. So, it has to be remembered that any press note that is received in a media house has to be written according to the needs of the media house, and it has to be used either separately or some part of it goes on to make a part of any other bigger news. Now, let us take certain examples of different kinds of press notes. The first kind of press note is about a personal or organizational accomplishment or achievement. Such press notes could be written to inform about record sales, about production, manufacture, exports, or profit figures. These could be sent in by any organization or receipt of any honor, award, incentive, merit, etc. Such press notes are issued routinely at the time of annual company results, examination results, award of doctorate or degrees, honors, etc. While it may depend upon the media house to publish such information at their discretion, such press notes constitute an important part of news, analysis, or features. Press notes containing such information must clearly mention the name of the organization, the category and the time period for which the achievement is given, or the occasion of the achievement or the award, any other significant record that may be associated with the accomplishment, and also a photograph if possible or if required. It is equally important to mention who is the sender of such information, since the media house must know from where this information has originated. Examples of such press notes are about awarding of doctorate degrees, percentage of marks or merit list after an important examination, record production of commodities such as steel, coal, power generation, and annual company statements about profit and loss, production figures, and so on. The second category of press notes is about announcements regarding policy or decisions. Such press notes constitute an important part of the working of the government or private organizations where public interest is involved. Such press notes must mention the information immediately followed by the name and the designation of the person who is responsible for it, that is, who is making that statement or announcement. For instance, if the press note is about the suspension of water supply to the city or a part of the city, it must be mentioned as to who has made the announcement. Or if the press note is about the support price of any agricultural commodity, it must be mentioned that who made the announcement. Generally, such decisions not only form an integral part of a bigger news item, but they also lead to writing of a news analysis or an editorial. Therefore, attribution of the fact to a responsible person is important. It must be remembered that any policy or decision taken at the government level is announced by a government functionary such as a director or a secretary or a government minister or whatever. Therefore, such announcements are never ignored, but the way they come in the form of a press note is always rewritten and redone to make part of either a news item which is written separately by a reporter, or that information is contained in a bigger analysis. The third kind of press note is about complaints of different kinds. Such press notes are generally issued by either individuals or NGOs, associations or political groups. These may be related to inaction on part of the government or enforcement authorities such as the police, etc., or it could be about a long-standing public grievance that has not been addressed. Such press notes must make clear mention of the problem and also the steps that have been taken so far to get it corrected, so that the seriousness of the complaint is highlighted. While most such press notes could be of genuine nature, NGOs and associations often use such press notes as a means of getting publicity, as do certain individuals who wish to see their name in print to establish themselves in public or political life. Media houses are therefore a little cautious of using such press notes, and therefore care needs to be taken to write them only for genuine purposes. The next kind of press note is about invitation to programs or meetings, etc. Such press notes constitute a bulk of all press releases received by the media houses. In any city that is the place of publication of a media house, such as a newspaper, there are a number of events held during the day or the next day or the next day where the organizers are looking for media coverage. Such organizers routinely send press notes about their future programs to a newspaper or a media house, basically for the purpose of announcing the program for the likely participants and also for requesting the media house to cover the event as news item. Such items are either published in the columns such as Today's Diary or Today's Engagements or Today in City, and they could also be used as a part of a news item if it pertains to an ongoing meeting or conference. There is a set format of writing such press notes. This goes like this: first, the name of the program, then the name of the organizer, then the name of the place, and then the time. For example, in a city, suppose a youth club is organizing a seminar on national integration to mark Republic Day on January 26 at 11 a.m. in the town hall. The press release has to be written in this fashion: January 26, seminar on national integration organized by youth club, town hall, 11 a.m. This precise form is the form in which this press note should be written, and there are chances that in this form it will be published most easily, because the newspapers and the media houses have a set pattern for using such press releases. Therefore, the sub-editors and the reporters must get trained in writing such press releases in this fashion. It is to be noticed that the additional words like conjunctions, adjectives, etc. are removed so that the basic information is conveyed for those who could be interested in attending the program. Needless to say, the press note must also mention the name of the sender clearly so that the authenticity of the information is established. Another kind of press note is in the nature of suggestions or opinion on current news. Such items are more in the nature of letters, essays or opinion pieces, but are very commonly sent in as press notes in the hope that they will at last or at least find place in the publication. If they are in the nature of response or reaction to something that has earlier been published, then these can be used appropriately. But if they contain a reader's or a contributor's own suggestions to a problem or opinion about a current topic, then the media house exercises its own discretion in using them. The style of writing such items reflects more of the personal style of the writer and the sender, and therefore these may not be in the nature of media writing. One can refer to the style of writing the news analysis or the features in this case. Both have been discussed earlier. That brings us to an end of our discussion on writing press notes for the media. In most media houses, this kind of writing exercise is given to the trainees or the trainee journalist or the media trainees to understand their news sense, as also to help them polish their command over the language. Therefore, writing different kinds of press releases needs to be taken in the right and serious perspective by the beginners in the media industry. Now, we move on to specialized writing, and we shall take up two broad categories of writing, that is political writing and business writing. Political writing. Political writing in India and in most nations across the world enjoys a wide readership. Generally, political writing is the responsibility of seasoned or senior journalists, since this kind of writing can have serious fallout or impact. But almost every newcomer to the media world picks it up as the first choice of writing. Everybody wants to do political writing in the beginning, possibly because it looks easy. In a democratic country like India, political discussions are an integral part of our social gatherings, household discussions, and everyone, regardless of background or training, has a legitimate political opinion or a political stand. Therefore, everybody knows a little bit about politics, and therefore everybody feels that he or she can write about politics. In countries where the media does not enjoy freedom to write about politics, political issues or the working of the government, such as in countries where there are kingdoms, dictatorships or single party rule, etc., political writing is extremely limited in nature and scope, and political writing or political journalists, political commentary, etc., are not encouraged. We have a democratic system of governance in India. Therefore, not only political writing is encouraged, but almost every kind of political statements find their way to the media, whether it is extreme left or extreme right or any other opposition to the government or extreme support to the government. Everything that is in the nature of political writing is permitted according to certain freedoms granted to the media. Now, since the government touches the lives of almost everyone, comments on the governance system, its system and failure or successes, its shortcomings, political interference or political initiative are also commonplace in a democratic society like India. Therefore, almost everyone thinks that he or she can do political writing without any kind of formal training, because most of people in our society grow up in a system where the government has touched their lives. They have seen the good and bad kind of governance, therefore they have an opinion about it, therefore they feel they can write about it. But it must be remembered that not only knowledge of the political system and its working, but a sense of depth and perspective are key requirements for political writing of any format. Such writing can be in the form of news, analysis or editorial, but since the subject matter remains similar, therefore there are certain points which are common to political writing of all formats. These pertain to both content and style. Now, what is political content? This is related to any one or more of the following types. Number 1, statements, coverage of press conferences or announcements. Number 2, proceedings of a legislature or an elected house, like even the Nagar Mahapalika or the state assembly or parliament. Number 3, meeting of a political organization and a political body such as the legislature party or a party's executive, state level or national level executive, a political board or an election board or a political committee. Fourth kind of political content could be in the nature of analysis or interpretation of certain political moves. And the last kind of political content is in the nature of speculation, making guesses or having certain conjectures about what may happen or what is going to happen. Now, what is the style in which political writing can be done? All the above mentioned political content can be written in two styles. One is a straight style where you simply report who said what, even if it is a political statement, and keep it straight and informative. And the second kind of style is commentative. In the commentative form, one not only makes certain statements but adds opinion to it. All political writing must ensure that the basic purpose of media writing, that is to inform and educate, is always maintained. Whether it is writing about any piece of legislation passed in the legislature such as assembly or parliament, or the possible consequences of a meeting between two political rivals, or even the speculations about any future political alliances between two parties, political writing must have the basic information that is to be communicated to the audience. The major difference between political writing and other kinds of media writing is that in political writing, it is not possible to attribute a lot of information always to any source. For people who are doing political writing, their own observations, unverified quotes, eyewitness accounts, and above all, personal knowledge of the political scenario, the political system, and the political history of a certain place or individual, these all play a vital role in constituting a political report. For example, a reporter could just get a bit of information about an opposition party politician meeting a ruling party minister in the backdrop of some fierce debate going on in the assembly about any irregularities in that particular ministry to which that minister belongs. Now, mature political writing must look beyond the obvious facts, which in this case are two politicians of rival parties having a meeting in a guest house, in a club, or in any public or private place. This is the single piece of information. Now, the background of the meeting, its timing, place, the people who accompanied each of them, the level of secrecy that was maintained by the two people who met, the comments of other political functionaries, and in the end, the authoritative quotes from the two individuals concerned, an opposition leader and a minister. These all must be considered together in the right perspective to make the report, which will ultimately convey a lot more to the audience than the mere happening of a meeting between two individuals who are at the opposite poles of the political spectrum. As noted earlier, since the interest of the public in political matters is always very high, the range of interpretation, speculation, and wild guesses is also very high. Therefore, any novice or a newcomer can claim to write an analytical piece of article on political issues based largely on hearsay and common or often misjudged perceptions. It can happen when people listen to a lot of political talk amongst people, amongst other media, in the marketplace, in the public place, and those who are less mature, they can have different kinds of perceptions or impressions about what is going to happen, and if they write a piece based on this kind of information, it will reflect their immaturity. That is why a mature approach combined with personal knowledge of the political scenario and deep understanding of the political scenario and the political history, these are essential for political writing. It is because of these factors that in the media worldwide, certain political writers or columnists have acquired such a reputation that whatever they write is taken very seriously by politicians and people alike. Obviously, the right kind of interpretation of even an innocuous or insignificant political event is not possible by someone who has spent very little time in pursuing political parties, visiting their offices, meeting even the small office bearer, and so on. Knowledge of the correct name of the political persons, their designations, their current affiliations, exact dates and figures of say election or the party's strength in the house, previous examples of different governments and different parties, and historical recall. All these are absolutely essential for making a mark in political writing. Now, it also must be noted that in India, political writing has different shades in different regions of the country. Accordingly, what is acceptable in North India may not be acceptable in South India, or it may not be advisable to make a political comment in the northeastern states or a state which is turbulent like Jammu and Kashmir, whereas it could be perfectly legitimate or commonplace in other states that are politically more stable. Then comments on religious, caste, community, confrontationist issues, controversies past and present, personal likes, personal lives, whims and fancies of politicians are to be avoided in political writing for the sake of public interest and maintaining peace in society. Another important point to be noted is that political writing in many foreign countries with a democratic political system such as the US, Britain and Japan, and many countries in Europe is strikingly different from that in India. One can remember the comments made in US or Britain or Japan about the king or the president or their personal lives, or about corruption issues, or about party working, financial issues in certain parties and government. We have seen a lot of extreme kind of political writing in these countries that is still not possible or advisable in a country like India. It is because of many factors, basically because India is still an emerging democracy despite being a working election oriented democracy for the last so many years. There are issues that are still not very settled or not very comfortable to discuss. So therefore, political writing has to take into account all such kinds of sensitivities and delicate issues which must be avoided. Now we come to business writing. With economic liberalization, writing about business, economy, industry, corporate sector and finance, this has acquired a much bigger dimension than what used to be in the pre-90s era. During the 90s and even before that, business news used to occupy just half a page in a full-fledged newspaper. From that half a page in those days, today business news has become an independent segment on its own, to the extent that there are dozens of exclusive business newspapers published in different languages all over the country. One can often come across important business dailies in English or business channels on television that are dedicated exclusively to business news. That shows the importance of business and the audience for business news in a country like India. Like politics, business and economy also touch the lives of every citizen. With economic policies, investment opportunities, and happenings in the corporate sector attracting the interest of a general reader as well, business writing today has become a large and significant part of media writing. Business writing also includes items such as news, features, backgrounders, interviews, and reviews, besides some specialized items. In keeping with the very nature of business and economy, business writing is based on hard facts and statistics such as figures of money, production, manufacturing, and so on. And this is the first essential part of business writing, that is, having access to statistics that are authentic and can be attributed to a known source. In business writing, there can be absolutely no compromise with facts and figures, regardless of the nature of writing, whether it is a news item or analysis and so on. Facts are sacrosanct. The scope for interpretation of facts and figures is also limited, since the figures showing, say, loss or profit in the annual financial results of a company can never be interpreted otherwise. If the facts show loss, it cannot be interpreted as profit. But the factors behind the figures can and must be analyzed and interpreted. Therefore, most business news is largely interpretative in nature. That means it begins with certain given statistics, figures, quotes, or announcements, and then the business writer goes on to explain it, interpret it, studying it threadbare, discussing it, and then making certain projections. Another major requirement of business writing is to maintain and display a distance from the subject matter, be it company's affairs or a business tycoon or impact of the government policies on the business world. For example, anyone having investment or financial interest in a company or its promoters must avoid writing about that organization or individual. Not doing so can cause incalculable harm to the writer's credibility, which could then become hard to establish. It means that if a political writer and if a business writer who is writing about a certain company is also involved in the financial transactions of this company, then this kind of writing will always be deemed as being influenced by the writer's personal affiliation, and therefore whatever that person writes will be interpreted by the reader as being one-sided or biased. Therefore, one must be very careful about business writing in ensuring that personal attachment is always avoided with the subject which is being written about. Having basic knowledge about mathematics, that is facts and figures, accounts, banking, or international trade also proves helpful in business writing, and many news publications prefer taking in commerce or business management students for business writing or business publications. However, this is still not a precondition that one has to be a business or a commerce student for business writing. Most of the business writers in the past have come from non-business backgrounds. It is only in the recent past that students having degrees in business administration or commerce or accounts are going into media writing. If we recall major business newspapers in India such as Business Standard, Economic Times, Financial Express, Financial Chronicle, Business Line, Mint, or business magazines such as Business India, Business Today, Business World, and so on. All these publications have separate sections for reports related to the stock market and share movements on a daily basis. Although typically the stock rates are received in a table form from the stock exchange, but then the figures and rates are generally used in a slightly abridged form, short form, because of space constraint. The day's movement of the stock market cannot be used in the entire form, therefore it is shortened and only some selected information or selected movements are used in writing about the share market. Another thing to be remembered in business writing is that excessive use of adjectives needs to be avoided, such as fantastic recovery by stocks, magnificent performance by the oil company, extraordinary returns on investments. Such exaggerated kinds of statements must be avoided because it is not possible to support or sustain such statements on a long-term basis or even for a day. It needs to be remembered that in the world of business, things are highly volatile and newer records are set almost every day. If the use of adjectives is not chosen correctly, one may end up with little left to be said or little left to be used. Caution and discretion needs to be exercised when writing about new product launches or the company's public relations exercises. Maintaining credibility in such cases is very important so that the image of the writer and the publication remains independent. Realizing the importance of the media, several companies and business establishments today take the services of public relations or the PR people to spread the word about their performance, achievements, etc. Such press releases issued by the PR agencies or the PR departments need to be dealt with in a very proper and credible manner so that the desirable information is used without unnecessary frills. The press notes issued by the PR companies, as one can understand, are in the nature of promoting a very private interest of that company. So, if a business house sends in a press note about its people or its achievements and so on, then the media house has to remember that only such information needs to be used that the public would like to know. Not every reader would be interested in the personal achievements of a business house executive or a business house manager. So, the PR press releases need to be dealt with in a very cautious manner. Now, we come to specialized writing for the media. As mentioned in the earlier lecture, there are certain kinds of writing that appear frequently in the media. We will discuss some of them here. One is the survey and opinion poll. As the names suggest, this is a kind of media writing that is based on responses generated in a widespread exercise on a chosen subject. The difference between the two, that is the survey and the opinion poll, is that while a survey could be undertaken randomly with respondents chosen from a cross section of society, an opinion poll is conducted amongst select respondents. Writing a report based on the findings of such an exercise requires careful handling, since even a slight mistake could lead to wrong conclusions being drawn from the subject matter. So, the first requirement in writing about a survey or an opinion poll is a very careful study of the figures, the obvious conclusions, and the possible interpretations out of the figures. Generally, such surveys and opinion polls are commissioned after an important or controversial decision by the government, such as a petrol price hike or a certain foreign policy initiative or a certain performance or event, such as Indian cricket team's performance. It fares very badly, then an immediate survey is conducted amongst the people. Since the purpose of such surveys and polls is to find out the difference of opinion over the subject among the people, the results are very often unexpected, and they could be found only when the responses are being analyzed. Therefore, an element of surprise is expected, and it is in fact advisable also to be there in such kind of writing, and it should be included also to retain the curiosity in the subject matter. For example, if the survey topic is to seek public view on the construction of a bridge in a city, that will involve cutting off say 200 trees, and the result of the survey indicates that the majority of the people who were contacted, they favor that the bridge should be constructed, and consequently the cutting of the trees is justified. Then an introduction of that expression of surprise at the people's view has to be made, but it has to fall short of criticizing the people's opinion, because ultimately the media writing is not about comment. It is about reflecting people's opinion and informing the readers about what people are doing. Now, if this example which I just mentioned about people saying that they favor cutting down of trees for constructing a bridge, if this is to be written, then the introduction could be something like this: the people of the city have voted for development over environment. The choice of words here is such that it is clear that the survey contains a very contradictory kind of statement coming in on the basis of interpretation of the survey. In case of an opinion poll, the views of a certain section are sought, such as students, only housewives, or only senior citizens, shopkeepers, businessmen, and so on, since the purpose is to elicit the opinion of a particular section about a particular move or decision. In this case, the outcome may not be so dramatic, because if we are talking about change in the pattern of examination, so we need to know the views of the students only. There is no point in getting the opinion of housewives or senior citizens or business people or business tycoons about their views in the change of pattern of an examination. So, in this case, the outcome will include what do the students feel about the change in the pattern. So, naturally, the result will not be very dramatic, because some people will obviously support it or some may not support it. It is not as dramatic or contradictory as mentioned in the earlier example of a survey, or in case of only women or housewives being contacted for an opinion poll about some changes in personal laws or marriage laws and so on. So, here the target audience is limited and defined, so that the opinion of only those who matter is collected. Another select kind of writing is travelogue. A travelogue is amongst the most interesting and popular forms of media writing, since it brings graphic expressions of popular destinations to readers who may not have seen the place, but the writing brings back memories of that place to those who have been there and to those who have not been there. It brings pictures, expressions, and all kinds of description that keep that place alive. The best travelogue is considered that which is written with the writer in the first person, living the experience. The writing skill lies in noticing even the small nuances of the journey as well as the destination, so that the reader actually feels as if he or she also has undertaken the journey along with the writer. Descriptions of the side views or something that goes alongside the journey are as important as that of the main journey. Another specialized kind of writing is questionnaire and quiz. Although questionnaires and quizzes are not always part of media writing, but an increasing number of publications are using questionnaires and quizzes routinely to provide variety to the readers. A questionnaire is generally given on a current topic to which answers are invited from readers. Similarly, a quiz could be designed with either a political or a non-political or a social issue, whether it is current or not. A questionnaire is written with even that reader in mind who is reading the publication for the first time. It means that no such references should be used in the questions which are not topical or have been forgotten. The language of the questionnaire also should be such that appears helpful to the readers rather than irritate them. It must be remembered that all media writing is done with the reader in mind. The purpose of media writing, as we discussed earlier, is to keep the reader informed and to make the reader understand what is going on so that the reader can take his own decisions. In short, the purpose is to empower the reader. So, on the part of the writer or the journalist, there is no need to show off one's knowledge or try to confuse or irritate the reader. Rather, good media writing is such that serves the purpose of informing the readers completely, regardless of the form, whether news, feature, editorial, and so on. In case of political writing, as we discussed today, the purpose is to make the reader understand the working of a political system, the working of a government, the behind the scenes movement in a political system of certain political individuals, and so on. But this kind of political writing should not cross the limits so that any kind of social or political unrest is created. Very often we have seen examples of media writing when certain writers and certain newspapers or media houses appear to take a certain political stand against a political party or against a government or against an individual. If such a thing happens, then the reader is made a party to this kind of a decision, whether the reader likes it or not. It must be understood that a political writer or an editor or a media house is not meant to take the readers on a certain political course, which may not be to the liking or of the interest of the audience. Similarly, in the case of business writing, one has to remember that the purpose of the business writer or the business editor or the business publication is not to tell the people where to invest and what happens to his money and so on, or to promote a certain company. The purpose of a business writer should be to ensure that the people understand the working of the business world, of industry, of economy, of the money market, the stock market, and so on, so that the people can make their own decisions, whatever they think is right, and the media should appear to be helping them, to guiding them. In case of specialized writings such as surveys and opinion polls, again the purpose is to reflect public opinion, not mold it, not guide it, not take it on a path which the editor thinks is right. It has to be understood that media writing, whether for print, television, radio, or whatever form, whether political, business, or travel, and so on, all kinds of media writing must serve the purpose of enriching the reader's mind, of making them more aware, more alert, and ultimately making them powerful enough to make their own decisions. In a democratic country, all kinds of political or all kinds of media writing have to serve that purpose, and more so in case of political and business writing, because these two aspects of life, political and business, they touch the life of most of the people, and therefore the expectations from the media are also very high. People generally expect the media to give them the correct picture and not be biased or one-sided. In the end, let us sum up the points related to writing political, business, and specialized items for the media. Political writing may seem easy to almost everyone, but it is most important to view it in terms of its impact. Therefore, it should be done after reasonable knowledge and experience of the political system, governance, and law. One has to be very mature, very sensible, and have a sense of history to write political items, analysis, and so on, because even a slight immaturity in writing about a political person or a political event can have very serious consequences. Business writing may require a sound knowledge of technical terms related to economy, industry, finance, manufacturing, and corporate sector, but then such knowledge does not necessarily come from having a degree in such subjects. Here also, having a horizon that includes every aspect of governance, every aspect of financial and industry and commerce sectors, and also having an analytical mind is important. The use of language in business writing has to be such that it does not become a collection of jargon. It should not become like something which is not understandable, which people cannot comprehend. One does not need to show off one's own business knowledge in terms of business writing. Specialized writings such as surveys, travelogues, and questionnaires must convey the purpose of the writing exercise and not used to show off one's knowledge. The intention has to be to inform the reader rather than irritate them. In case of media writing that goes beyond these formats, such as writing about a small event or a human tragedy or something that has happened in the past and has relevance to the present, there also the purpose has to be to inform the reader regardless of the format. One must remember that all kinds of media writing ultimately must serve the people's purpose and not the editor's purpose. The editor's purpose always remains to inform the reader and not tell people that, look, I know everything. This is all for today. Thank you, best wishes, and have a great day. Thank you.
This video will create a press release that will not only get noticed, but also read and acted upon by media professionals. Prior to writing your release, you should ask yourself a few simple, benefit-oriented questions. Number 1, what's your key message? Number 2, who's your target audience? 3, what does the target audience gain from your product or service? Number 4, what's your objective? When answering these questions, you should think like a journalist. You need to be sure that your answers are news-centered, and try to capitalize on current or local events within your particular industry. You need to become the news. Remember, don't advertise. Now you're ready to write. First, create a headline that includes primary keywords that will garner interest. Your headline should not be a repeat of your first sentence. When creating your headline, try to avoid using generic cliché words and jargon. When writing the body of your release, think of it more as a news story. Use the inverted pyramid style of writing to put the important information first. In what is now the top of the triangle, that's your lead. This is where you put the most important information. It's the 5 W's and the H. Who, what, when, where, why, and how. Statistics show that most people never read beyond the first 2 paragraphs of a news story, so it only makes sense to have your most important information go first. The second or middle section of the pyramid is where you put information that builds or tells your news. The bottom or narrowest point of the pyramid should contain the information that's least important. At the end of your release, include your company information so the reader can learn more. And there you have it. A few quick and important steps that will help you write the perfect press releases.